This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. For roll call, everyone is present. We'll now take a moment of reflection and respect, please. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda.
The council adopts the agenda for the meeting of September 13th, 2021 as presented.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, we will move into delegations and public meetings. And this evening, we have Laura Sherwood with us with the Hospice of Elgin. So I'll turn this over to you, Laura. Welcome. And we're really excited to hear what you have to say tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. What a warm welcome. Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and to provide a bit of an update on the Hospice of Elgin project. This evening, hoping to share a little bit about why this project is so important for our community. For those that are new to hospice, hoping to give you a bit of a behind the scenes of what hospice is all about, and also give you a little bit of a visual snapshot of what hospices look like throughout our region. And in addition to that, talk to you about the impact of hospice and how you as a council wanting to make sure that you're up to speed with what's been happening behind the scenes on our project so that you can help spread the word and talk about the importance of hospice in Elgin County. So maybe just to get started, I know we've got the slides up here, and I'll just kind of touch on a few points because I believe you have the slides in advance. Hospice essentially is a really critical project for our community because Elgin County is not only the only county in southwestern Ontario without a hospice, but equally as important, our hospital doesn't have dedicated palliative care beds. And so that means individuals and families often find themselves having to leave our community to access palliative care services at end of life. That's challenging, of course, for individuals on that difficult journey, but also very difficult for the family and caregivers who are there to support their loved ones through those moments. So it matters for our community. We also have a significantly higher aging population than the provincial average. So we know the need is quite significant in our community, and the pressures that are already on our healthcare system are so tremendous. And so building a hospice provides another option to families during end of life. And so what is hospice? And that really is the next slide highlights. Hospice is about providing end-of-life care to individuals and their family, whether it's through pain and symptom management, to psychosocial, spiritual support. It really is about providing wraparound care for the individual and their family. What's always surprising for so many people is that hospice is not just a place where you go. It is also a type and philosophy of care that gets pushed out. So Hospice of Elgin will not only provide a place for people to come when they need that service, it will also be pushing out care into the home and also into the community. So that's a really important feature of hospice. So our vision for Hospice of Elgin is really about building a campus of care, a place where people can go when they need that care that provides 24/7 expert care with the best physicians and nursing and psychosocial team, but in a setting that is really welcoming and warm. And so we'll see a little bit of that as I move through the presentation as well. In addition to the actual hospice residents, there will also be space for programs and services to support grieving families. It is also about having a palliative care clinic so that people can come to hospice, get great care, manage their pain and symptoms, but go back home. And the other exciting piece that we are exploring as part of this campus vision is really about providing respite care. So how do we have individuals come receive care, their caregiver can have a bit of a break, and they don't have to worry about their loved one, and then the loved one can then return back home. So it really is about strengthening our healthcare system, pushing as much resources into the community, helping keep families staying at home. But when that's not an option, we want to have a really wonderful place for people to come and spend their final days here in Elgin County. And so this is kind of my opportunity to show and tell a little bit about what some of hospice looks like. And the next slide provides a snapshot of some of the hospices in our region. So the one with the 10 water spouts, or they call it a reflection pool, is in the Chatham Hospice. So anchoring some of the natural environment you can see represented in the wood structure, the stones, the water. Those are elements that we anticipate will be very important in Elgin County as well. The one is the one image with the almost group timber structure is Jessica's house in Exeter, for those that are familiar with that community. The top living room space is Brantford's hospice. And you can see kind of flowing into the green spaces in the next slide that is samples of the beautiful gardens that is also at Stedman House in Brantford. Kitchen is also a really important part of having families come in and spend more life moments. And the kitchen really is the heart of hospice, where families come, have final meals, have points of celebration with their loved ones. And it's also the heart where we often find our volunteers. So over 200 volunteers will support the operations of hospice once doors are open. And part of that is preparing meals. Often people comment on the smell of fresh baked cookies when they're coming into hospice, because it truly is a wonderful place of many celebrations, life, and that includes, of course, even baking cookies. The next slide around the patient room is something I always like to share because it gives you a little bit of an indication of that balance of both being a healthcare facility, which hospice is, and what you'll notice though is you won't see any equipment. And so that equipment is essentially tucked up into that wood structure. And so what families can expect is to have all the conveniences of safe and appropriate care, but in an environment where they've got the fireplace, they've got a flat screen TV to connect to their family who may not be living in the area. They've got quilts on the bed. They've got big, large cuddle beds, workspaces for those families that are still working while visiting their loved ones, wood floors, and more of a home-like environment when you can't be at home. And so that really is a little bit about the hospice difference. It is about creating both a very therapeutic and wonderful environment. It's also about providing choice and making it easy for families and caregivers to come on site. That means no parking, no visitor hours, pets are welcome. It really is a holistic model of care that provides and meets the needs of families. It is also a place of life. And while death is something we like to say that we're really comfortable with, we know that many families is a very difficult journey. And so helping walk alongside that family and help identify ways that we can help celebrate more life right until the very end is something that is a focus of our team at hospice. And the impact of hospice goes beyond just the care. We know that building a hospice for Elgin County will create significant new jobs. It will attract and retain talent of our specialized healthcare facility, both from physicians to nursing to the PSWs that are so important for that care. It will also provide meaningful opportunities for our volunteers. And through the construction of what will be close to an $11 million campaign project, it will infuse economic benefits through that construction of that healthcare facility. So we are quite excited about the project, and to provide a bit of an update, because we've had some recent news over this summer, we've been able to announce that our hearts have landed on a site. So at 2 South Edgware Road, which is essentially a wooded area at the top of Waterworks Park in St. Thomas, will be the anchoring point for Hospice of Elgin. It is a beautiful site that that has tremendous nods to privacy and tranquility, tucked in the woods, and we hope to maintain the integrity of essentially that, a hospice in the woods. But again, I can't stress enough that hospice is not only the place where people can come to, but it really is about the push out programs and services, and actually 4 times the amount of people we serve will actually be in the communities. And so that just kind of leaves, to the end. We are just starting the journey to design hospice, spreading the word about how important this is in our community, keeping that conversation going with people who are interested in supporting our campaign is a really important piece to helping us realize the vision for hospice. And we are targeting to have doors open within 17 months. So an aggressive target, but we are continuing to champion and advance that project because, quite frankly, the need is so great in our community. And that's it for my presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. Are there any questions for Laura? Councillor Oslach. Are you on mute, Councillor Oslach?
I'm saying that to Laura, it looks beautiful. And when can I move in?
Well, 2023 is in March, but what I actually hope for each of you is that you have an opportunity before doors open to come and tour a space that, quite frankly, will touch so many families in our community for generations to come. So I hope you have an opportunity to come and, quite frankly, sample the fresh baked cookies, sit on the beds, experience a little bit what families will be going through when they come to hospice before you need it. And so I do hope that you'll keep that in mind as we continue through the journey as well.
Well, thank you, Laura. Are there any other questions? Okay, I don't see any. Oh, sorry, Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Laura, how is the funding for this facility going to happen?
Oh, good question. The operational funding or the capital funding for the actual building?
The capital funding.
Oh, good question. So we are well underway with a capital campaign. That campaign, we need to raise 11 million for the project. We are well over 50%. Actually, we're just over our 60% mark on our campaign. So in a time and space where COVID has been a challenge, we are feeling very blessed by the support that we've received to date. But we also know that we have a significant journey to continue on that path. What we're trying to do when we are looking and approaching our campaign in the building and construction, we know that it's important to balance out both from a due diligence perspective, making careful consideration about how we raise those funds and engage the community, but also raising money for what we're calling a sustainability fund. It's not only about building healthcare facilities, but it's about ensuring their viability and success for the long term. And so that's something that's part of our campaign goal as well, is a significant sustainability fund to help keep and operate the facility for many years to come.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any further questions for Laura? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much, Laura, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Oh, the same to you. Thank you so much for everyone's time, and have a great evening as well.
Thank you, Laura. Could we have the resolution, please, Josh?
That the delegation from Laura Sherwood regarding the 2021 Hospice of Elgin Municipal Update be received as information.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Councillor Barber. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is adoption of council and committee minutes to approve.
That council approves the following minutes: regular virtual meeting of council held on August 9th, 2021, and special virtual meeting of council held on August 30th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Ham. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Minutes to receive.
That council receives the following minutes. Meeting of the Elmer Secondary Water Supply System and Port Burwell Secondary Water Supply System Joint Board of Management held on June 9th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first and second quarter water quality results were in, and there were no water quality issues that had to be dealt with. People in the area may be experiencing some slight discoloration or a slight odor. This is a natural reoccurring event. This particular year, it's been compounded by the extremely rough water in Lake Erie. What's happening is that the water is turning. The lower part of the water is coming to the top, and the top is going to the bottom. And on top of that, with the turbidity, which is the wave action, is stirring up the water to a high degree. In order to counteract that, there's additional chlorine being added to the system, and the pH is slightly out of alignment right now, when we're trying to bring that back into where it should be. It will take a few days to do that. Again, there are no water quality issues. It's really just the appearance of the water and the slight odor that may or may not be happening depending on where you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Are there any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is the consent agenda.
That items 7.1 to 7.30 of the September 13th, 2021 consent agenda be adopted as presented with actions to be taken as noted.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Chapman. Are there any comments or concerns concerning the consent agenda? Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Clicking the wrong button. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. I just would like to discuss, or a comment, I guess, on 7.1, the Kinsman 2021 Santa Claus Parade. And just because, you know, the concern of what kind of parade they want to have, stationary or typical, and only because of the services that they require, even from the police, to in order to have the parade, if it's a standard parade route request. So maybe we could forward that to the committee that looks at those. I think you still have those meetings with the Emergency Operations Committee.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm just asking if we could just, not to lose sight of it, if we could just put that as an agenda item for that, please.
Certainly. Thanks, Deputy Mayor Andrews. And Josh will have that down. He's going to keep an eye on this one. We've got a lot of consent agenda items this evening. So, Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. I would like to support 7.16 and 7.20. I think the town of Elmer should send a letter of support for those two resolutions, those two consent agenda items.
Okay.
Because I think the PSA test for men for cancer of the prostate is important, and I believe support for hate and symbols and so forth is we should support that too.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Oslach. Staff, do you have any further information on either one of those items that you could elaborate maybe on these letters? Josh, could you help us out with this, just to make sure we approach this properly?
Certainly, through your worship and two members of council, 7.16 relating to the town of Cochrane motion. We've noticed that this has been a motion that's been endorsed by numerous municipalities. Owen would be able to speak to that. We've received a fair bit of correspondence. Really, as Councillor Oslich had mentioned, it's just looking to expand the scope of some of the services that are currently being offered by public health and in the province in that respect. So if council's agreeable to Councillor Oslich's suggestion, staff would certainly be able to write a letter indicating council's support and follow up with the municipality where that resolution originated from. And as far as 7.20, again, this is a resolution that's been making its rounds. We've been copied on this one several times as well. We included the source of the resolution, which was from the township of Huron-Kinloss. And really what it has to do is it's speaking to some legislation that's currently being considered just relating to hate crimes and incidents. And on that one, I wouldn't be able to speak to the specific details of that legislation, but we do understand that it's been passed and endorsed by various municipalities at this point, including Huron-Kinloss, Chatham-Kent, and it would appear as well that's Wellington County.
Okay, thank you, Josh. So I guess before we move on, are there any other concerns with the consent agenda or any other items you'd like to discuss? Okay, so how do we want to approach this, Josh, with the resolution then? Because we've got 3 items now that have come out of the consent agenda.
Certainly, through your worship, if council, I guess if the seconder, so Councillor Chapman, is agreeable to those changes, with them being that item 7.1 be referred to the Emergency Operation Control Group, and that council issues letters of support for items 7.16 and 7.20, we could just proceed with the resolution to take actions as noted. But we would need permission from the seconder and then a majority vote of council to dispense of the motion in that way.
So it's okay with you, Councillor Chapman? Okay. All right, that's great. So if we have no other discussion with the consent agenda, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is the first action item. It's report OPNS 1621.
That report OPNS 1621, entitled Program Review, Fall Leaf and Yard Waste Collection, be received for information, and that council directs staff to undertake a formal review of the fall leaf and yard waste program and report at a future meeting of council potential changes and improvements to that program.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Charlton. Christian, are you going to give us a bit more information about this report?
Yes, I'd love to, through you, your worship. This is just sort of a summary. As council is aware, the town of Elmer provides biannual leaf and yard waste collection programs to its residents. Spring collection typically always takes place the last week of April, maybe the second last week. And the fall collection starts in October, but that is far more weather dependent. Spring leaf collection sees residents place their waste in classic brown paper biodegradable bags. Fall leaf collection only requires residents to place their leaf waste at their respective property's curb. Once at the curb, public works staff make their way through town multiple times, clearing the roadways. From the staff's perspective, the fall leaf and yard waste program generates the highest volume of complaints of those programs under operations oversight. Thus, the staff feel a formal internal review of the fall leaf and yard waste program is warranted. An internal review would include public consultation, stakeholder engagement, a review of industry best practices, and a review of the equipment and program delivery overall. Ultimately, it is the town's goal to provide the best service to its residents. As the council is aware, any changes to the waste collection programs can generate considerable public interest. The staff are seeking council direction prior to undertaking a formal internal program review of this nature. It would be the staff's goal to see the fall collection program emulate the spring collection program's performance in the end. And that's sort of just a brief overview, but if anybody has any questions or wants to make any comments, feel free.
Thank you, Christian. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, we are dealing with nature, and some trees let their leaves go sooner than others. And I think the staff is doing a great job the way they're handling it. I know once in a while they get caught with an early snowfall, but they've always been able to finish the job and do a great job. I can't see how we can improve on it unless all the citizens want to get together and buy a tree shaker to shake the leaves, remaining oak leaves off the trees. So I would just congratulate the staff for the job that they're doing and leave well enough alone. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Andrews and then Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, through your worship. Just a comment. I think social media says a lot. And we do see quite a few comments in the fall that, there's leaves blowing around. People have them piled up in the curbs. It's probably dangerous for kids. It's dangerous for people who are walking on streets where there aren't sidewalks. I think it's always been kind of crazy that we just can put them in the curb. And, like the report says, they go into the sewers, they back up the sewers. I don't think it's that much to ask for people to bag them. And I think it would be much more efficient. It would be easier for the town staff to pick them up. And then it's incumbent upon the property owner at that point to make sure that the mess of the trees is cleaned up. So that's my opinion. I agree completely with Councillor Charlton that our staff has done a great job, but I think that from a homeowner's perspective, we can do more. And if that means gathering the leaves and putting them in bags, then that's what I would request from our citizens too.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. Councillor Chapman.
For your worship, I would like to see the review done to see which is more economical. If there's going to be cost savings by placing them in bags and putting them at the road, then it's worth investigating. If it is, now people would, if you did it, then people would have to go and buy bags, and they would consider that an expense on the homeowners. But an expense to buy a bag is cheaper than an expense to pay for all that equipment to come and collect the leaves. So I would like to see a review done to see what the response of the community is and go from there.
Councillor Oslach.
Yes, your worship, I agree with Councillor Andrews and Chapman. But basically, I raked my leaves to the fall last year. They come and pick them up, and next week my neighbor raked the leaves to the fall to the curb. And there's a logistics part of getting organized. Basically, all the neighbors have to do it all the same time. And like Councillor Chapman said, all the leaves don't come down at the same time. They're different species. So I think we should have a review. And I agree with Deputy Mayor Andrews that bags are the best route to go.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. My thought is that let staff do the report, keep an open mind, and bring the results of that survey back to council. We can make an informed decision that works.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barber. Are there any further questions or comments concerning this report? I'm seeing that basically everyone's in agreement with the recommendation. So if there aren't any further comments, we'll vote on it. So all those in favor of the report? And that's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Christian. The next item up is report OPNS 1721.
That report OPNS 1721 entitled Program Update, Termination of MHSW Services Agreement be received for information.
Someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Ham. And I'll turn it back over to you, Christian, please. And if you can give us a bit more information.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, and to members of council. This one is a lot more straightforward. So in August of this year, the town of Aylmer received notice that the municipal hazardous or special waste program was being terminated at the direction of the Minister of the Environment. The termination of the program is slated for the end of September of this year, so the end of the month. The MHSW is what allows residents to take household hazardous waste to the St. Thomas Community Recycling Center. This kind of waste would be paints, oils, batteries, fuels, chemicals, propane tanks. As it stands right now, nothing has been announced regarding a replacement of the outgoing program. However, when it is announced, we can expect to see something more similar to the new Blue Box framework coming to the province in 2023. So in other words, household hazardous waste will now fall under the individual producer responsibility framework. Town of Aylmer staff have been in communication with the City of St. Thomas, the operator of the Community Recycling Center, and at this point there is considerable optimism that there will be no disruption to service and hazardous materials will continue to be accepted beyond the September 30th deadline under a new framework. The staff would recommend to continue to monitor developments prior to making any alterations to the program or the CRC use agreement with the City of St. Thomas. Again, moving forward, the staff will continue to monitor developments and report to council as further developments occur.
Okay, thank you, Christian. Are there any concerns or questions with this report? Councillor Charlton.
Through Your Worship. So does this kind of mean that the people that have paint or paint cans left over, they would take them back to where they bought them, and they, like whether it was Rona or Home Hardware, they would dispose of that stuff, or will there be an area like we have now to carry on? I know a previous maybe to this, didn't the fire department or somebody have a couple of days or a weekend where they did collect hazardous waste, batteries and oil and stuff? And I guess that was done away with, and then we started going to St. Thomas with this type of waste.
I believe it's most likely correct before the agreement was in place with St. Thomas, but I would expect, it's too early to say for sure, but I would expect that in the end, you still will take it to St. Thomas Recycling Center. The same process probably will be involved of just dropping it off, but just it basically, this is kind of like a warning that things perhaps could change, but I would say that there's considerable optimism that it will continue past the September 30th. Just there might be minor differences, but you would still take it to the recycling center.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is report finance 0321.
That report finance 0321 entitled Financial Summary, Report and Variance Analysis, Year to Date, be received for information.
Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Councillor Chapman. And I'll turn this over to Heather now. Good evening, Heather.
Good evening. I just have to get my note up here. Sorry about that. I lost my Excel file. Overall, the staff have been consciously monitoring the spending and are aware of the significant budget pressures this year. So I just wanted to mention, in addition to the report, that the management reporter system that we implemented in 2021 is actually working out very well, and all of the department leaders and directors are able to make better decisions based on seeing how they're doing compared to budget. Some of the challenges so far that we've noticed probably go without saying, related to COVID from lost revenue at the EECC. And of course, revenue streams are impacted from marriage licenses, hall rentals, etc. I did want to note that the building permit fees that have been generated to this point are apparent to be on target for 2021. Also, staff have been busy selling parcels of land that we can offset to recover some of the deficit generated by the initial purchase of land in early 2021 related to the farmland held for industrial purposes. And we are also thankful that we still have $70,000 worth of COVID funding to offset any other items that we have coming up with the different vaccine requirements. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Are there any questions or comments concerning Heather's report? Councillor Charlton?
Through your worship, I was just going through the report and I just saw some big percentages, and I just wondered how what was going on there. And the first one is the total tax write-offs. You know, we budgeted for 25,000, we end up at 181,000. That's an increase of 726%. Could you explain that a little further, please?
Certainly, through your worship, and to Councillor Charlton. Typically in the past, the town has not budgeted for more than $25,000 worth of tax write-offs, purely because we never really know at the beginning of the year what could potentially hit. The next report that I'm going to present has the detail of actually the tax write-offs. Some of the tax write-offs include minutes of settlement from MPAC, and also some endorsements for properties that had changed to nonprofit. So currently, right now, we've recovered through SUPs about $25,000 of the tax write-offs. We're anticipating with the building permit fees being on target that this may generate also supplemental tax bills to offset some of the 181,000. But some of the tax write-offs are actually related to prior year, back to 2018. So I don't anticipate that we're going to be in a deficit at this point. And if we did ever have to use the surplus deficit reserve, it's a very healthy reserve right now. So.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Charlton.
And just one other one, the net general fund, it's 565%. We budgeted for 704,000, and we ended up at 3.98 million. Could you explain that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so the challenge with these mid-year reports is that you're writing your tax, or you're running your tax bills mid-year, so August, but your expenses for the whole year aren't going to hit until December. You still have 4 months worth of taxes or tax expenses and other expenses for the operations that are going to hit before year end. So that's why it looks like there's a huge surplus at this point, purely because of the point in time where they were reporting. The way the budget was loaded was a full year. And we're looking at maybe in the future being able to do a budget by month so that we will actually see current values and a current tax surplus or deficit on the reports. But right now we don't have the capability of doing that.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good explanation. Thanks.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next report is Finance 0421.
That report, Finance 0421, entitled Tax Write-Off Report 2021, be received for information, and that Council acknowledges the changes to the 2021 tax rolls as outlined in Schedule A as the 2021 tax write-offs approved under the Municipal Act.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Ham. And I'll turn this back over to you, Heather, please.
Through you, your worship, and to members of council, you're just seeing this report a little bit early purely because we did have such a substantial amount of tax write-offs. I wanted to get this before council before the end of the year. Typically, I think you would see this report November because then all the subs and omits would be pretty much done for the year. I just basically wanted to show everybody that we did have some fairly large tax write-offs this year that hit in 2021, as I said, related to prior period. And then I had mentioned earlier when we were talking about the supplemental tax bills that 25% of the write-offs have actually been covered so far with the supplemental tax billing process.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any questions or comments concerning this report? Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Worship. To Heather, is there any particular easy explanation as to why 2018 worked into this one?
I believe there was a confidential report to council related to properties that were changing through the legal system from nonprofit to profit, or sorry, from profit to nonprofit, and then that would have changed the actual tax class. Also, the large industrial plant in Elmer also was able to receive a bit of a tax relief through the process.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next report is CAO 5121.
That report, CAO 5121, respecting the 2021 to 2023 Transitional Strategic Plan, be received as information, and that council endorse the Transitional Strategic Plan and direct staff to provide updates at least once each year.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Oslach. And I'll turn this over to you, Andy, please.
Thank you, Mayor French. So this is a proposed transitional strategic plan update to lead us to the end of this term and into the next term of council. The strategic plan is, aside from the budget, one of the most important documents in giving staff direction from council. So we wanted to get it before you and see if we were going in the right direction. On the last page, there's a number of charts that kind of show the projects that our staff are working on and the timelines, and we want to keep these updated and report back regularly to council. Some of those updates might be informal, but some of them will be reports like this, so the public can kind of see as well where we're going. One thing I did want to note for council is that the environmental stewardship is an area, it's one of our 5 pillars, but it's an area where we do need to do some work over the next year to try to determine projects for the town to go forward, because we haven't fleshed out that thorough enough yet in our processes. So I believe the environmental committee was just struck right before the pandemic hit, and that has been kind of unfortunately put on pause, but we want to get back to that and ensure that we're fulfilling all aspects of our strategic plan and not just the ones that fit nicely with what we can do now. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions or take any feedback you might have.
Okay, thanks, Andy. So are there any questions or comments or any feedback for Andy? Okay, I don't see anybody with comments, Andy. It's a great report, Andy. Thank you very much. Well, if there aren't any further questions or comments, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next report is Clerk 3521.
That report, Clerk 3521, entitled Approved Grants and Donations Policy, be received for information, and that council approves the grants and donations policy as presented, and further that council directs staff to advertise the updated policy and send follow-up correspondence to 2020 grant requesters regarding the revised processes for 2021.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Ham and Councillor Chapman. And I'll turn this back over to you, Josh, and you can give us a bit more information, please.
Thank you, Mayor French. And 2 members of council, in early 2021, staff were directed to develop a standardized grants and donations policy. with a revised application form and standard operating procedures being within the scope of that. Staff have prepared a draft grants and donations policy for council consideration. The main objective of this is to provide council with a tool to objectively assess and award grant and donation requests during the annual budget process. So this draft policy that's before council this evening outlines different types of grants, sets out funding eligibility requirements, outlines submission processes, and outlines the application review process. Staff did an environmental scan of neighboring municipalities and also other municipalities that had high quality policies throughout the policy development process on this. And it is worth noting that an October 31st annual deadline is being recommended as a component of this policy, just so that it coincides properly with the revised budget processes that council will be seeing. We're hoping to be quicker on that each year moving forward. And as a result of that, in the past, council having an inconsistent deadline has been somewhat receptive to some of the later grant requests that come through. We've sort of walked them on one by one. And with this type of policy, staff are recommending that no late submissions would be received unless there was a very exceptional circumstance. Once approved, staff would proceed with running a communication plan to make the community aware of the revised process. And we're also recommending that staff follow up directly with the 2020 grant recipients just to outline some of the revisions to the process and provide them with a revised application form in the event that they wish to apply for a grant for the year upcoming. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions.
Hey, thank you, Josh. Are there any questions for Josh? Councillor Charlton?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would think any of the grants that we currently give out, the paperwork that they do submit would be adequate. As far as they're all just kind of local things that we all know about. I would hope if they submitted a letter similar to that, it would be accepted, but I'm sure they will try to fill out this form. This is it's quite a process, I think. I don't know just how they would categorize themselves. It's kind of like the first garbage contract that was 2 pages and then it got to be 47 pages. But I guess there's got to be a standard form and a deadline. I just hope that if some choose not to fill out this form, that their application wouldn't be denied. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Andrews?
Thank you, through your worship, just a comment. So I was actually going to say the exact opposite. I like this form. I think that it's incumbent upon anyone who's asking the town for money, because it is the citizens' money that are allowing these grants, that there's consistency across the board. There's transparency. I know, it's easy just to write a letter saying that you want it for this and this, but I really think it's important that we know exactly where this money is going, because we have seen in the past where, money has been given in the form of a grant and has it been used? And, this way it does outline and it makes them more responsible when they're asking for money. So sorry, Councillor Charlton, I'm exact opposite in your on your stance with this. I think this is exactly what we need to keep everybody, on the same plane when it comes to asking for grant funds. So I like it.
Councillor Chapman and then Councillor Oslach.
Through you, Your Worship, I agree with Councillor Andrews. I think that having a more formal application puts everyone in the same position. I'm sure if they needed help to fill it out, there's resources to help them fill it out. And we need accountability for where that money is going. I agree with Councillor Andrews. The form is appropriate.
Okay, Councillor Oslach?
Yes, Your Worship. I agree with Deputy Mayor Andrews too. I think having a deadline because in for future years, we get submissions all right up to end of February. So, and the standardized form, I think, is really, really good. I compliment Josh on the work that's been done.
Thank you, Councillor Oslach. Are there any further comments? Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. I echo Deputy Mayor Andrews' thoughts. The form is not that complicated to fill out, and with a little bit of forethought, I'm sure any of the existing groups that have received assistance can certainly fill it out, and it puts everybody on an equal footing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barber. Any further comments? So I have to say it's a great report, Josh, and I've seen this at the county. And actually, I'll be honest with you, our policy is a lot more stringent. We have made it a bit easier at the county, but this is standard across most municipalities, and we really need to do this. As Deputy Mayor Andrews said, it boils down to transparency, and we always, as she mentioned, have to remember that this is the taxpayers' money. So we have to be very cautious how we spend this money. We've been entrusted to do due diligence, and then through these forms, we will be able to do that. We also have to remember that if we can get our dates carved in stone, it's so much easier when it comes to time. We've been scrambling for many years now. I know some of the councillors here this evening can attest to that because of late submissions, it's made it tough with our budget. So I'm all in favor of this, and I want to congratulate Josh as well on an excellent report, and it looks amazing, this policy. So are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is new business and matters of urgency. Okay, Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, I was just wondering if Talbot Trails is going to need more time at the complex before their new facility gets done. If we can accommodate it, are we able to extend their time at the complex to run their business, or are they going to be out when the contracts?
I'll turn that over to Andy. Maybe he can give you an answer. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that, Tom.
Through you, Mayor French, I haven't looked into it yet, but I believe that there is a possibility that we could extend. Certainly, at this time, I don't think there's a lot of bookings right now for rooms, so there is a potential for us to make a bit more revenue from the situation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there anything further? Okay, seeing none, we will move into reading of bylaws and proceedings thereon. Third and final reading.
That council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4521, being a bylaw to regulate open air burning in the town of Elmer, and bylaw 4621, being a bylaw to adopt the records retention schedule for the town of Elmer.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Chapman. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. The next item up is first and second reading.
That council gives first and second reading to bylaw 4921, being a bylaw to amend the bylaw 0718 as amended, referred to as the procedural bylaw, and bylaw 5221, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy division registrar and deputy issuer of marriage licenses.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Next item up is to suspend procedural policies.
That council suspends the procedural policies to proceed with three readings of bylaw 5021, being a bylaw to declare certain land surplus owned by the town of Elmer, and bylaw 5121, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the closing documents for the sale of rolls 65300, 6540, and 6500, being located on Leslie Avenue in the town of Elmer.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Ham, are there any questions or comments? Do you have a comment or a question, Councillor Charlton?
Yes, I do. Through your
Go ahead.
worship. So we're going to let the realtor get the conservation area authority involved to see about certain species of trees that may prevent the sale of those lots, or was the town of Aylmer going to do that? To me, if you let the realtor do it, it's like asking the fox to guard the chicken coop, but just
Through you, Mayor French, the requirement is upon the purchaser, so they have the right to access the property during daylight hours, and they will review and work with the Conservation Authority on all those issues. We've provided the realtor and the purchaser all of the documents that we have, so they can review all aspects of it, whether it's drainage or easements or anything like that. But in terms of determining doing the design engineering and technical work and including the trees, that's up to them.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions, comments? All those in favor? And that's carried, thank you. And now we'll move to the 3 readings, please.
That council approves and gives 3 readings to bylaw 5021, being a bylaw to declare certain land surplus owned by the town of Aylmer, and bylaw 5121, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the closing documents for the sale of rolls 65300, 6540, and 6500, being located at Leslie Avenue in the town of Aylmer.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Chapman, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, the next item up, inquiries by members. Seeing no inquiries, statements and committee reports. See none this evening. There's no report of the mayor. Notice of motion. I don't believe there is one. And so we will move to meeting closed to the public.
That council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 7:57 p.m. to discuss the following matters. Item 15.1, Chief Administrative Officer report CAO 5421 respecting White Street industrial lands, and that's pursuant to section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act as amended, as the subject matter pertains to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Ham, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried, and we'll move into closed session shortly.